Hello everyone, this is the first video that I'm really posting to my channel that isn't just me playing music or, doing something silly. So I wanted to kind of introduce you to the little man on the screen and his fishy friends. So this here is Tim the turtle. He's a rescue. I've had him for nearly 8 years, and when I got him he was probably around 5 to 8 years old at the time. But the person who previously owned Tim was leaving the country, and instead of going through all of the channels that would you have to take in order to rescue an animal, which would be especially difficult because he is a reptile, and the laws regarding saving animals like reptiles are much more difficult to kind of go through. He ended up asking around, and so I ended up, because nobody else wanted him, I ended up saying I'd take the turtle, and along with the turtle I ended up getting a scooter that I actually never used. It just sat in the garage of my apartment building until my wonderful ex-landlord actually kind of took it upon himself as a wedding present to me to get rid of the scooter for me, which, I mean, I'm so grateful. I had no idea how to get rid of that kind of trash or whatever, and I mean, I just gave him everything, and the owner of the apartment building was just like, okay, I'll take care of it, no problem, which was amazing. And it's something he did not have to do, but he did anyway, because I don't know, after living in the same apartment for so many years, I guess, and I mean, I guess being the Canadian that I am, I found myself becoming friends with him and the other older guys that hung out at the bottom of the apartment. I don't know, I think he would just also really like the idea of me having a Korean boyfriend at the time, and then of course getting married to said Korean boyfriend. He was just tickled. Anyway, back to the main story. So Tim ended up coming to me several years ago. He was in a tank that was probably 1.5 lengths of his size. So it was nearly like, if we said he's 10 centimeters at that time, it was probably around 15 centimeters long. It had a really old filter on it, just whatever you'd get at like a mart. And the other thing that I noticed there were two things that I noticed about him when I first got him, and that was that his fingernails were super, super long, and that he was immensely overweight. Like, he was so overweight that he couldn't actually fit into his shell, which, I can assume is because he was unable to swim around and he was just being fed. Now, the other thing about this turtle when I got him is I heard a bit of his backstory, and his backstory was that when he was much younger, when he was first bought, his owner had bought 2 turtles, a male and a female, because he was considering starting a breeding the 2 turtles together with his then girlfriend. However, I guess sometime after he got both of the turtles, he decided to go on vacation, and when he went on vacation, he did ask several people if they would come down and look after the turtle while he was gone. Now, from what I can gather, and from what other people have told me about the story, is that he never actually chose one person to come in and look after the turtle, and nor did he actually give them instructions on how to take care of the turtle. So anyway, guy goes off on vacation for about a week, maybe 2 weeks. I'm a little fuzzy on all of the details, but after a few days, the people that his coworkers, the people that he was working with at the time, realized that they were asking each other, like, are you going to check on the turtle? Are you going? No, I'm not going. Are you going? And so with a bit of back and forth, I guess one of them decided to go into the apartment, and when they got there, they made the unfortunate discovery that this turtle, Tim, had eaten his sister to survive because he just hadn't been fed for days. And, you know, it's a tragic story. It's a story of survival, I guess. But, you know, I guess after that, he was like, okay, fine. So I guess after that, people started taking care of the turtle while this guy was away on vacation. And, you know, I don't want to fault the guy. He wasn't a terrible person or anything like that. I think he just wasn't really equipped to take care of turtles and didn't really know what he was getting into when he got the turtle. I mean, neither did I, to be fair, but I did make a conscious effort to start, you know, researching and trying to find out what were the best ways to take care of the turtle. Now, please do forgive my tank setup. I know it's not perfect, and I know it's, you know, it's not, he's a rather large turtle. He should be in a much larger tank. I do understand that, but it's kind of hard to do that. And I mean, at the time it was really hard to do it. I mean, you know, nobody else is willing to take this turtle, and it's, for me as a foreigner in Korea, I don't really know all of the channels in which I can go through to, say, find somebody who's better equipped to take care of this turtle. So, you know, I don't know any rescues for, especially for exotic animals. So instead of just like releasing him out into the wild, I decided to take him in and try and take care of him the best I could. And now I have had this little guy for probably around 8 years. He has flooded my entire apartment. He has cost me millions of won in, sorry, I'm watching video of him right now, and I'm kind of like watching him breathing. And I, like, at the moment he's going through a bit of, like, not necessarily a health scare, but he's definitely having, I don't know how to explain it. I think he got a little too skinny. I wasn't feeding him enough, which, again, another issue that can happen. Okay, so 8 years ago, I got him, and he had really long fingernails, and he was obese. So the first thing I realized I had to do was get him a bigger tank. When I first got his tank, or a new tank for him, it was just like a rather large, like, plastic bin, you know, like the Tupperware container variety type. I got him one with clear sides. I tried to get him some toys and things like that. I made sure there was enough water in him for swimming, which I think my friend didn't realize that turtles enjoy swimming more than anything else. So I did that. I got him a new filter. I got a new light. You know, I did everything I could to take care of that. I also wanted to clip his nails, but my friend told me not to. And I mean, at the time I believed what he was telling me about the turtle, because I was like, oh, I'm brand new to owning a turtle. I have no idea what's going on. But I found out, so my friend was like, oh, don't clip his nails because that's like clipping his manhood. And I was just like, are you okay? Sure. However, down the line, when I did eventually realize that little man needed a visit to the vet was like, you gotta clip these because he can actually like stab out his own eyeballs. And I was like, okay, thanks. So I was like, okay, yeah, clearly I should not have listened to my friend about, or not my friend, my ex-coworker about anything regarding little Tim's care. I mean, I knew I shouldn't have listened to him, but I don't know. I think for some reason I inherently trust people because I inherently assume that they know what they're talking about, but they don't. so that's that. I mean, that's bit me in the ass more times than I can count. But anyway, so I got him. I kind of got him exercising more. I got him into a bigger tank. We clipped his nails. Eventually, I did start seeing a guy who was Korean, and that helped a lot. Because my Korean, I mean, I've been living in Korea for many, many years. However, my Korean skills and my inherent distrust of the internet had been a big problem for me in terms of trying to, like, say, order something online, like ordering a larger tank, you know, ordering supplies and things like that online. I'd always just relied on what was closest to me. And, you know, yes, I understand that I am completely ridiculous for having had those issues. I think it was that whole, like, oh my god, if you give away your information, you're gonna end up, you know, somebody's gonna steal all your money and blah blah blah, because it's the internet. It's scary. That was not the case. Anyway, eventually we got ourselves a larger tank. So at this point, I think he's in a 50 liter tank, something like that. It's long. He does have some chance to move around. I would love to get him a bigger tank, but at that point we're talking like thousands of dollars, which I do not have at the moment, especially having just left my job. Anyway, eventually, you know, I hope to get him a bigger tank if he's still kicking and still farting around. But at the moment, he seems to be doing all right. Although I will say, I did have a couple of scares earlier this month. So I've seen him shed before. I've seen him go through shedding his shell. The shoots were coming off, but this time it seemed like it was really, really thick, and he ended up with a big white spot on his back, and I was like, shell rot. And I was terrified. So I was taking him out. I had him come out of the water. I was looking at him. I was pressing on the spot, you know, just trying to gauge with my limited knowledge of what could possibly be wrong with the dude. And he seemed all right, you know, like I wasn't sure. But yeah, the shoot itself definitely looks now like it's just he's shedding it. The shoot underneath looks fine, so I'm not too worried about it. It's just coming off in a rather thick scale, so I'm like, ooh, I don't like that. I do intend on going to see the vet as soon as I can. I've got a couple of things going on, and I am trying to take care of my own mental health, so I know I feel really bad about, you know, my poor man's health getting pushed a little bit to the wayside, but I am still taking care of him. I'm still keeping an eye on him, and he does seem fine. Like, he's eating fine. He's eating like a tank these days. I actually started feeding him more because I noticed he's getting a little too skinny, and if you look at the video, you can see him breathing. Like, say when he goes to surface for air and he's, you know, taking in some deep breaths, you can see how deep into his shell his body is, which, I mean, when I first got him, it was impossible. He was just, you know, he was poking out of his shell. You know, his flesh was poking out of his shell. He couldn't put his legs in. He couldn't put his arms in. Couldn't put his head in. He looked very unfortunate. But now he looks, he's able to kind of retract everything in. Although he doesn't, because he likes it when the cleaner fish kind of like take a stab at, you know, sucking on his flesh and getting rid of anything that's on his body. I don't know, he loves it. It's kind of like that, I don't know, I assume it's kind of like what fish would do in nature, which is cool. They definitely have a very symbiotic relationship, which I was a little bit worried about. When I first started getting fish for the tank, all of the people at the fish shops were like, you want to what? Like, you want to put these fish in with a turtle? And I was like, yeah. And I'd show them a picture of the turtle and be like, yeah, he just seems kind of lonely. So they're like, you realize he'll eat them? And I'm like, well, he might. And I mean, that's cool if he does. If he doesn't, also cool. But, you know, he is he is a reptile, and reptiles eat fish and stuff. So I wasn't too worried about it. You know, that being said, you know, I do love my fish. A lot of them have been with me for a few years now, which is surprising, because I have killed several fish by accident here in the process. Actually, Tim, I have probably killed more fish than Tim has in the few years that I've decided to start adding fish to the tank. Although these guys, the ones that are in there with him now, I've had them for the better part of a year or half a year, and everybody seems to be doing all right. But I mean, there were more. A lot of them have not made it. But you know, it happens, and I feel bad. I know I feel terrible. They are still living beings and the like, but you know, I feel like they're having an okay life. They get fed quite a bit, actually, and they're chunky monkeys. I don't know why I'm calling them monkeys, because they're fish. Okay, anyway, I got off topic again. Where was I? Shedding. Yeah. So the first time that I realized that Tim was getting sick, this was probably a few years into me owning him. I noticed some vomiting, and I was like, oh no. And I was really worried about him. And, you know, what happened? So he was vomiting. He was fine. He wasn't basking. That was the problem that I was seeing, is he wasn't basking. Or no, was it? I can't remember. Anyway, there were problems. He seemed a bit off, so I decided to take him into a vet. Shout out to Eco Animal Hospital in Eastern Seoul. Great place. They do take care of their pets really well, and they do try their best, even though maybe they don't know a ton about the kind of pet you got. So that was like one of the animal hospitals that would take reptiles or exotic pets in Seoul, which, I mean, they did business because nobody else would take them. Everybody takes cats and dogs, but nobody takes exotic pets, and that's a little bit hard. But anyway, I took him in. The doctor told me that actually he probably has a lung infection, so we kind of took care of that. I ended up having to nebulize him for months. I was giving him oral medicine. I spent millions of won trying to help this guy get back to health. So I ended up I took him to the vet. Sorry, I got distracted by my beautiful husband. Okay. Took him to the vet, gave him lots of medication, nebulized him, gave him oral medication, which, if you've ever tried to give a cat a pill, think it's 10 times harder, because you gotta actually you gotta crush up the medicine, you gotta add liquid to it, you put it into a little whatever it is they give people to give them shots, and then you have to put it into his mouth and feed him through his mouth, which is difficult because he's gonna bite it, and if he bites it, you're pretty much screwed because the actual tip of the thing won't actually let the medicine through anymore. It's nuts. Eventually he ended up getting a lot better, and actually he recovered, and since then he's been kind of chilling. In this video, I don't think he actually does any basking, and I'm kind of I'm a little bit mad at him these days because we bought him a very nice basking platform, and he doesn't seem to want to go up there, and I'm kind of at my wit's end in terms of trying to figure out how I'm supposed to get him to go up there. But he does get his heat lamp, he's got his heater, and he has his UV lamps as well. So, you know, I am worried about him. I do feel like I want him to be out of the water more, so I am considering just like taking him out of the water and letting him walk around more. Not that I want to do that, because you know, I have a cat, and he and the cat, I mean, they are besties. They do hang out a lot, but you know, just, you know, my house is relatively clean. The floors are definitely clean. They get cleaned probably every other day by my sweet princess robot Roomba type situation that actually has a water, like a mopping function, which I love. But anyway, you know, he's I'm worried about him, you know? He's got that little thing going on in the back of his butt. His tail looks a little bit icky, which is something that is like, I don't know if this is a problem or if it's just like he's shedding his skin, which is like, he's never done that before. But, you know, ever since we moved, he's kind of been keeping to himself, and I did get him a different substrate when we moved, but I think he likes it because it's sand, and before it was nothing, because before what ended up happening is I had rocks, like smaller rocks, in the substrate, and the vet was like, ooh, no, he will eat those, and it can, like, he can get impacted, and that's a problem. And I was like, okay, what kind of substrate can he have? And they were like, he can either have sand or he can have rocks, or big rocks. So I got big rocks, and you know, we did big rocks for a long time, but recently I did add sand substrate. If you guys have any idea of, like, maybe that's what's causing him to not want to go out of the water so much. I also got him that really big piece of wood, which I'm considering taking out. I don't know, it seems a little bit, maybe it's too big for the tank. He seems to like it. He kind of tries to push it around. I don't know. He's kind of like a big muscle guy, and he'll sort of push things around. Like, he's like, look at me, I'm strong," and I love it because, you know, I like watching the little guy struggle with a piece of wood. He'll also try to mate with his smaller piece of wood. I mean, and by mate, I mean, you know, do that flappy like hand thing, which, I mean, all power to him if he wants to, you know, get his rocks off. I have seen what he looks like when he is trying to get his rocks off, and let me tell you, I thought he was dying the first time I saw it. Thankfully, the first and only time I saw it. I thought his intestines had come out of his body, and, you know, like, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to take him to the doctor. But no, in fact, he was just feeling particularly randy that day. I don't know. But anyway, he's been doing it to the smaller tree that I've got in there, and then the bigger tree he likes to like push around like, I'm a big man. Anyway, so yeah, all of that happened. We did a big move, and he's now kind of like coming to terms with the big move. I've made some changes to his tank. I'm not 100% sure on those changes. We're gonna keep, you know, perfecting and changing if I have to. This is my man. Please enjoy watching him, and if enough people like the video, I'll try and make more. I'll try to make the setup a little bit better as I go. Of course, like and subscribe, and have fun watching a little turtle hanging around with his fish friends. Oh, and if you can give me names ideas for the fish, that'd be great. I've been kind of just calling them like long boy and like black suckers and that kind of thing, which I know it's not actually their names, but there are, you know, some fish in there that don't have names yet, so if you can think of names to give them, I'd much appreciate it. Oh, by the way, that big round looking fish in there, it has one eye, so it, you know, pirate themed names. Great idea if you think so. Anyway, I will catch you on the flip side. Enjoy the video. Bye!